Our next panel, Empowering Cybersecurity Through Dual-Use Innovation, Diana and beyond. We'll discuss how dual-use innovation can strengthen cybersecurity. Joining us today are Bart Houlleberghs, partner at TIIN Capital, Peter Lenk, tech leader at Goldilock, Joseph Williamns, ICT sector lead commerce tech policy advisor to Governor Inslee, State of Washington. Moderating this panel is Alba Acerawan, Cabinet Institutional Relations and Events Technicians at Infibe. Please welcome our moderator and speakers. It's all yours.
Thank you.
Not a huge crowd.
So, good morning, everyone. It's time to talk about dual-use technologies, as the last speaker did as well. Technologies such as artificial intelligence or quantum technology are changing the world and the way we face challenges and threats. And especially since the war in Ukraine, the development of dual-use technologies has come to forefront. To talk about this, I have the pleasure to welcome here Joseph Williamns, ICT sector lead and tech policy advisor at Washington State Department of Commerce. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Peter Lenk, tech lead at Goldilock. Welcome. And Bart Houlleberghs, partner at TIIN Capital. Welcome, and thank you all for joining us. Globally, NATO and more organizations are boosting initiatives such as Diana, which is the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, precisely established to find and accelerate dual-use innovation capacity in a wide range of areas and across many different sectors, such as cybersecurity. Actually, in Spain, in CIBE, alongside Universidad Politécnica de Madrid, is the Diana's Accelerator. We are committed to fostering innovation in cybersecurity, and we've been implementing incubation and acceleration programs for years, and we've launched one of the most ambitious strategies for public procurement of innovation in cybersecurity. So fostering dual-use technologies is part of our mandate as the National Coordination Center of the European Cybersecurity Competence Center. So the first question for Joseph, who is supporting Diana's accelerator from the public sector. How does public sector involvement help bridge the gap between defense and civilian cybersecurity? Joseph.
So thanks for the question, Alba. So the state of Washington has a vested interest in Diana. We have a Diana campus in the state. It's co-hosted by some DoD work as well. So they're tied into the university ecosystem, and they're tied into the 5 military bases that we have in the state. And effectively what the state does to promote Diana is we align to the mission. We help them with their convenings. We help them in terms of developing the entrepreneur ecosystem. The state of Washington itself has made a significant investment in autonomous surface vehicles on the water. And what we do is there's local investment, state level investment, federal investment, and of course NATO investment. And we are part of that overall portfolio, and we try to play the biggest role we can, given that we don't set dual-use strategy. That's done by the commercial sector and by the US government, and we're just trying to facilitate. But we have a lot of federal resources attached to us that we leverage.
Yeah, so public sector is
a facilitator.
Yeah. So Peter, tech lead at Goldilock, which is a startup which is being accelerated by Diana. How can cybersecurity solutions initially designed for civilian use be adapted for defense applications and vice versa?
Thank you for the question. Good morning, everyone. The answer is it depends. Let me give you an example. Under Diana, we were funded to look at cyber resilience of energy systems. In that particular niche, so far we haven't found any real differences for the requirements of our device for a defense purpose or for a civilian purpose. Basically, everybody's following commercial standards for such devices, so we haven't found any friction there to be able to use it in that limited sector. On the other hand, if we're talking about putting one of these devices in a data center or something like that, then we'll find a huge difference, I think, in terms of the requirements that we will need to meet on the device in terms of common criteria, maybe tempest testing, those sorts of things. And there's another dimension to it. It's not just about the technology. It also means we need people now that have security clearances. We need a facility that's security cleared probably to do some of this work, which has implications on the company. So that's probably the bigger challenge is how to run a very small company and have a foot in that world, which requires security clearances of personnel, safe storage of material, and the commercial sector, and try to keep the costs down on the commercial sector so they don't spill over from that extra overhead. So there's two dimensions to it. For now, in the energy side, we haven't found any real roadblocks or any friction to working with the defense side as well.
Great. And how this meets with investment necessities from the investment perspective, Tim, what are venture capitalists like TIIN Capital looking for in dual-use cybersecurity innovations? What you are looking for?
Yeah, thanks, Alba. Thanks also for a cool event again this year. I think first of all, we're not a focused dual-use investor. We're a cybersecurity investor. We invest in cybersecurity companies across Europe. We look for differentiated market positioning, winning teams, and a clear go-to-market focus. And if that ends up an investment in a company that has a dual-use application, then that's kind of a side effect, I would say. But when I reflect on we've recently done 2 investments where there is dual-use application. If I look at those 2 investments, what kind of stood out there compared to the other companies in our portfolio? I think one element is what Peter already alluded to. I really see, in a way, a bit of a challenge also for investors investing into those companies, is that in a way you're dealing with a company that has really two characters, right? On the one hand, there's defense, public, government business, long sales cycles, security clearances. That really puts certain requirements on the company. On the other hand, there's the civil commercial market where it's much more open, fast-moving, marketing and communication is done differently. So as an investor in a dual-use company, you need to have confidence in the team that's able to manage those 2 worlds, because you're really talking about 2 different worlds in that sense. That's how we look at it.
How can we make these worlds
come together?
Come together.
To be frank, and I'll be curious to pick Peter's brain on that too, I wonder if you really can, in the sense that, I mean, the most recent investment we did was in a company that delivers to the US DoD, European governments, some of the special services, etc. And even the Dutch government marks them as strategic. So the Dutch government says, okay, this company, export restrictions apply, but even at exit, so if we were to sell the company in 5-10 years, in theory, not just in theory, the government has a big say in if that exit can take place and who will be able to buy that, because it's strategic, it has defense implication. So your question, how can you bring those together? I mean, you can probably bring them closer. And again, curious to get Peter's idea.
Peter, please, if you have more ideas about it.
Yeah, thank you. One of the other sort of points of friction, I think, for a company is just the procurement processes. If I'm dealing with a commercial company, we can conclude a deal very quickly, and deliver devices. For anything to do with the government, whether it's defense or not, the procurement processes are rather cumbersome. And that's also a big difference between the 2 worlds. And it's in the government side, it's not a sprint, it's really a marathon. And a little company has to be able to survive that length of time to actually make that sale. And that makes it very difficult. So I think there's a real onus on governments and NATO, having started something like Diana, to have a real good look at those procurement processes and start to make changes. We need innovation in the processes that are used to acquire this technology. The world changes very quickly in the cyber world. If how we buy things, we're always going to be, quite a ways behind in defense in those areas where we actually need very strong cyber defense. So it's kind of my appeal to governments here to have a look in the mirror about what they're doing after they've incubated the technology, incubated a little business, and then we wait 5 years to make a sale.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. The world changes really fast. So, Joseph, your point of view, how do you think accelerators help startups prepare for the specific challenges of defense cybersecurity?
So what we do through what we call the Mission Accelerator Center, which is where Diana is headquartered in Washington, we do a lot of training of founders and executives on what to expect. We do an awful lot of training on the resources available to help them. So if you're going to sell to the US military, you have to be CMMC 2.0 compliant. That's actually very hard. It's expensive, and we do the best we can to make that less complicated. If you're going to sell to the US military, that's different than selling to the Canadian military, which is different than selling to anybody in Europe. And we try as best as we can to decomplicate that process. But as a state, we can only do so much, and the federal government has a series of agencies in the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, and the Space Command that try to deconflict a lot of the problems with dual-use technologies. And when I think dual use, I'm always thinking commercial, military, but I'm also thinking export control dual use.
Yeah.
So those are always present in the way we address everything.
Peter, I think it's interesting to talk about the hurdles that startups like Goldilock or any other startup face when creating dual-use cybersecurity, dual-use solutions. What are the main challenges, the main difficulties?
Yeah, again, it's it depends on the particular application of the technology, but certainly if you're talking about sort of protecting IT systems in defense, it's going to be to get those devices. I know NATO, for example, runs a list of approved products list, they call it. So these are products that have been screened, then they say, okay, if you choose from that list, then they should be okay to be used on our networks. The problem with that is if you come along with a disruptive technology, something new, it doesn't fit into any of the categories that people have on there. And so it's actually quite difficult for a little company to find out, well, what standards do you want me to certify my product to? And again, as Joseph pointed out, it varies by country. And so depending where you're doing business, you may need to apply different standards. And that's a real challenge to take that product that you have and figure out how you're going to market and what part of that market you're actually going to address to certify the product for use in that particular environment. So that's why, for now, I think, working on something where we're fairly sure we're kind of compatible in both worlds actually makes sense. I can address the energy sector in the defense world, for deployed operations or somewhere where defense comes with its own energy, address that market, but also address the civilian market, and then slowly work into the other one.
Are you 50-50 split, or what's kind of the
50-50
like a focus? How?
Well, right now we're early enough in as a company that we're looking for sales wherever they come from, but we're very interested in developing that defense market because of Diana and the dual use, and we see a real, benefit we can bring to defense with our product. So we've opened an office in the U.S. largely to address, the defense side. Is it 50-50? No, not yet. I think we need to get some pilots in. We need to, start to get. With any sort of disruptive technology, it takes a while for people to actually understand what it is you're bringing to the table. We're not building a better mousetrap. We're building a completely different product that's innovative, and because of that, people need to understand what it is, and it's going to take time. And defense, it's going to probably take a little bit longer. But maybe in the Netherlands, in a small country, or Spain, maybe that's a bit faster. So we're looking at exploring those markets as well, clearly.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think in the whole process, how do you think Diana or the initiatives like Diana can help?
I worked in NATO for 22 years. I'm familiar with the, let me call it, bureaucracy that exists in NATO. Diana is a breath of fresh air. It's one of the best things I've seen NATO do in terms of actually addressing the technology gap and the sort of enable companies to actually bring technology to the table and help them with that process. Diana had a very structured curriculum in phase one, so little companies that don't know how to work with defense, there was a set of lectures basically on that, a set of lectures about how do you protect your own intellectual property, both from a legal point of view, but also from a cyber point of view, so you don't lose your secrets and have them stolen by somebody or encrypted or whatever else. And a number of other topics that really help companies to understand the dual use market and how to develop the product. The other thing I think Diana really helps with is just making contacts, the networking. A lot of industrial events, a lot of mentoring from venture capitalists, from technical people, from others. Another big benefit was the testing program that Diana has, the so-called TEVV, where in addition to the normal grant, you could apply for grants to do the technology sort of testing. That gets you, very importantly, in front of real users. So we did, for example, a tabletop exercise in Estonia with people from the energy sector, one of the major energy providers, from NATO, from the military, from a lot of others, and sort of walked through a scenario with various injects to show cyber attacks, and got an awful lot of feedback from them on how they want our product to look and feel and how they would use it, and that's all stuff that then we can incorporate. Plus now we have contacts with all those people. So very important part of it was that networking that brought to the table.
Yeah, I think there's more than advantages. Like, what do you think, Tim? The advantages that Diana has. Yeah, from the investment point of view, I guess it's a plus, right?
No, it's very, very important, very significant. I think in our world there's the term called investor ready, right? So when we look at companies, are they, let's say, investor ready? And I think programs like Diana, especially in a much more complex market of defense and dual use, having those companies go through the elements that Peter highlighted, and really understanding what they're getting into, and then being able to explain to an investor, look, we're asking for 10 million, and this is what we're going to do with it. We thought about these risks, this is how we're going to address them. We have access to the right people, because I think that's always super important. And when I speak about TIIN Capital, usually one of the things that we can help our portfolio companies with is opening doors. However, in the defense domain, our network is also limited. So if Diana can kind of accelerate startups to have access to people, validate their offering, super important. Yeah, I think we haven't had the
What is specific? Sorry,
go ahead.
What specific criteria do VCs use when evaluating this type of projects, dual-use technologies?
So I wouldn't say there's specific criteria different than others. So it's always about do we have the right team? Is the technology and the positioning differentiated? Is there a clear outlook on the market? So I wouldn't really see how it's different in criteria. I do see how it's different in understanding how the defense world and the civil world kind of come together and being able to manage that as an entrepreneur. And I think that it sounds like Diana really helps in that domain to kind of go through the acceleration process. And
Joseph, your thoughts about it?
Well, I'm mindful of the fact that in the state of Washington, we have 400 cybersecurity startups. So pretty big number of startups. Of the 400, so far as we know, 30 of them are working on behalf of the military industrial complex. Of the 30, I am told 2 are attached to Diana. And so part of the challenge is, Bart's spot on. Getting venture capital into this space is really hard. Getting it attached to the defense complex is even harder. And getting it attached to NATO, when we're on the Pacific coast closer to China than we are to Russia, well, actually, we're close to Russia, but the other side of Russia, is very difficult. And so on the public sector side, we need to sit down with these startups and help them think through all the connection points. And Diana is a very important connection point. That all said, military defense and national security procurement is a freaking nightmare for a startup. And helping smooth the way is something we can assist with, but we cannot make the complexity go away. Diana is less complex, so that's a step in the right direction. But it's, for a startup, if I was doing another cybersecurity startup, I probably wouldn't focus on the military. I just could return more to my investors by focusing on the commercial sector. And that's a hard reality. Be interesting to hear what Bart says about that.
I mean, I would concur, but I think a lot of that has to do with what you're comfortable with, right? So we are comfortable, we have our network in the commercial space. We're just less comfortable in the defense domain. It's newer to us. But I would agree if I had to put my money. So in our portfolio companies, we do steer them more towards the commercial sector than we say, why don't you go pursue a government or a defense contract? I mean, those are the exceptions. They're in the portfolio, but they are the exception. But yeah, then again, maybe Peter has a different view.
But anyway, we are trying to bring all the both worlds together, right?
100%.
So we have just 3 minutes left. I would like to hear you about where are we heading. I'd like to know what emerging trends and technologies should the startups and investors be aware of in the next years. What do you think?
I'll just very quickly say one of the biggest challenges that we have in the United States and in NATO is compliance. It is so hard to show that you're compliant. It's so hard to be compliant. It's so hard to maintain compliance that a lot of the innovation we're seeing is in the compliance space.
Peter.
Yeah, I think the whole industrial control systems, whether it's energy or utilities or factories, so far my experience dealing with people in those sectors is they're a long way behind in thinking about how they're going to do cyber defense. So I think there's an opportunity there to really strengthen that, because we know from the experience in Ukraine and other places that the attacks on those sectors are increasing and are having a major impact on things. The other thing I think you'll see more of is AI. There's a number of companies here that are involved in that, but both from an offender's point of view and from a defender's point of view, which means, for companies like ourselves, we really got to focus on timelines and how quickly we can react. And I think the only way to do that in the future is going to be automation, whether it's AI or some rule-based things, but it's going to come down to, machines detecting that something's happening and making decisions. And people are going to be uncomfortable with that for a long time, handing over the keys to the gold to a machine to make an algorithm to make those decisions. And those machines then become a target as well. So we have this kind of very touchy situation as to how we're going to handle that, because it opens a whole new attack vector, attack surface. But I think we have to go there. The timelines are just too short.
Absolutely, it's challenging. Tim, please.
So Compliance, yes, big thing. CRA also coming into Europe will drive a lot of demand. Critical infrastructure protection, 100%. AI, which has AI for security, security for AI, right? There's two sides of that. And then what I would like to add to that, something we're actively really looking into is software supply chain. So really pipeline integrity, so making sure that the end code, that you control the full chain of that software development cycle, and that there's nowhere risk that's being tampered with, or so that's an extra one I would
yeah,
add
emerging technologies, AI, compliance, said before. We have a challenging future. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much.
Good time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Alba. Let's move on to the second.